Welcome back, everyone, and this time we're going to continue looking at lines, and we're going to look at that standard form of a linear equation. You can practice this on S17, write equations in standard form. I know that we've talked about standard form before, but this time we're going to be a little bit more specific, so let's go ahead and get into that. All right, standard form of linear equation. Before we get into it, I want to go ahead and start with a little example here. Of an equation that's going to, if you plotted this, if you made an XY table, this would definitely come out to be a line, two variables, both to the first power. But what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and pause the video and write this in y equals mx plus b. Write this in slope-intercept form. So I'll go ahead and wait and pause your video. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do this with you. And first of all, we want the 5y, we want the y by itself on the left side. So the first thing we need to do is get rid of this 15x. It needs to go away. That means we'd subtract 15x from both sides. But as you know, we can accomplish the same thing simply by taking it across the equation and changing the sign. So I could put 20 minus 15x, but since I'm going to y equals mx plus b, I want the something x first. So instead of putting the negative 15x here, I'm going to put the negative 15x here. And then I'm going to put my plus 20, which is right here. And that leaves the 5y by itself over here. So all I've done at this point is take the 15x and move it to the other side. I've subtracted 15x from both sides. Still not exactly in y equals mx plus b. I need to get this y by itself, and you know how to do that. You divide the 5 out. And if you divide 5 out of one term, oh my goodness, if you divide 5 out of one term, you have to divide 5 out of all of the terms. I do not know what's going on with this thing. Okay, so these cancel, leaving y. Negative 15 divided by 5 is negative 3, so that's going to be negative 3x. And 20 divided by 5 is going to be 4. So there it is, y equals mx plus b. So I went from what looks like a standard form down to slope-intercept form. Just want you to have that in mind because we use a lot of the same tools and techniques to go back and forth between these. So let's go ahead and get started on standard form. Standard form. Okay. Now specifically what standard form looks like. Oh, first, you might hear this called general form. In fact, when you get out of high school, it's probably more likely to be called the general form of a linear equation. But we're saying standard form of linear equation. And it looks like this, as you've seen before, ax plus by equals c, where a, b, and c are numbers, x and y are your two letters. A and b are the coefficients of x and y, and c is a constant. But there are three things that have to be true in order for this to actually truly be in standard form. And the first one is this. The a has to be greater than or equal to 0. The a has to be greater than or equal to 0. In normal terms, what does that mean? It means it can't be negative. If you're 0 or you're bigger than 0, then you're not negative. If you're not 0 or bigger than 0, then you are negative. So only this one, only A cannot be negative. These two can be negative. It's fine. That doesn't matter if B is negative or C is negative. That does not matter. It only matters if A is negative. A cannot be negative, and I'll show you how to fix it when that comes up, and it will come up. The second thing is this. A and B are not both 0. Because if these were both 0, you'd have 0 times x is 0, plus 0 times y is 0. So you'd have 0 plus 0, so it'd just be a big 0 on this side. And then the only number that would work over here would be 0. You can't say 0 is equal to 7 or 0 is equal to 50. So it doesn't work. A and one of them can be 0, but they can't both be 0. For instance, if b was 2 and c was 3, you could have 2/3, right? Or 2y equals 3. If y was 0, then you could have 7x equals 12. That would be fine. They just can't both be 0. And then finally, A, B, and C are integers whose greatest common factor is 1. Now, what does that mean? If they're integers, that's just another way of saying they cannot be fractions. You cannot have fractions in your equation. And what does GCF equals 1 mean? That means it has to be simplified. If they have a common factor other than 1, then they have to be simplified down. So the first term can't be negative. These can't both be 0, and you can't have fractions, and it has to be simplified down. And we'll look at a few examples of that in the next video.